Hello, friends. We continue with the prologue to the Canterbury Tales written by Geoffrey Chaucer. The poem begins with the description of the nature that is friendly and very conducive to a merry journey that 30 pilgrims are going to undertake towards the shrine of the holy blissful martyr Saint Thomas Becket. And since Chaucer has had a talk with each and every of the 29 travellers who entered the Tabard Inn in Southwark, he is full set to give his description of the characters of the pilgrims who are in to undertake their journey. And he says that he is going to begin first with the night. And of course, here is the night. A night there was, and that a worthy man, that from the time that he first began to ride out, he loved chivalry, truth and honor, freedom and courtesy. So he singles out his very loved knight, the knight who was a worthy man. He begins by describing him as a man worthy of awe and admiration, because that from the time that he first began to ride out, so he showed his promise, he showed his mettle right from the beginning of his life. And what did he love? As a knight, he had all the qualities of a great man. He loved chivalry, bravery. He loved bravery, truth and honor. He also loved the two virtues of truth and honor. And since he was a knight and he had promised himself the making of a knight, so he loved freedom, but that he loved courtesy. It is believed that people who have power tend to become haughty and discourteous. But this knight, this adorable man, is courteous as well. However, we see this quality as one of the, you are asked to choose the odd man out from among the similar tasting, similar sensing things. And courtesy is in a way slightly out of the way, but he had it. Full worthy was he in his lord's wars, and wherever had he ridden, no man fear. So he was very worthy in his lord's wars. We see a glimpse of the 14th century England here, that in those times, brave people were employed by the lords. Really meritorious people. So it was not that this knight had attached himself to one army. He was called for his worthiness by several lords, and he had proved himself worthy. And wherever did he ride, he rid the people of fear. No man feared, because he was courteous as well. He loved truth and honor, so he would do nothing unjust to anyone. So he was not feared as well in Christendom as in heathens. So whether the people were believers, Christendom is the land of the believers, and heathens is the land of the non-believers, no one, whether they believed in God or whether they were non-believers, they respected him equally well and ever honored for his worthiness. So, the very first adjective which Chaucer has used for his knight is not the adjective which he confers upon the knight. He was honored everywhere for his worthiness. Universally acclaimed was this man as a warrior and also as a human being. Now, how was he worthy? At Alexandria he was when it was won. Full often time he had the board begun. So he was at Alexandria, the biggest of the nations at that time. He was taken in as the warrior for them, and board begun. This is the beginning of the board. To begin the board means that in the 14th century England and in Old England, and even today, there is a parallel system to begin the board. Board is the table laid down with eats and drinks in honor of the victor. And the one who is allowed to take the first toast there and to take the first carving from the feast that has been laid there is called as beginning the board. That is an event of celebration to honor someone really great. So full often time this is an indication to his worthiness that many a times had he the board begun. Not only Alexandria, above all nations in Prussia and Lithuania had he raised, and in Rus. No Christian man so often of his degree in Grenada. So he was so much praised in Prussia as well, in Lithuania and in Rus. No, there was no Christian man who was ever given as much reverence as he was. None from among his degree. And what was his degree? From among the knights, he was the noblest of all. In Grenada also, at the siege had he been. Eke is also, siege is attack. So when an attack was made on Grenada, he was the one who caused the victory to his master of Algezes, and rode in Belmore. At Lays was he, and at Satterley. So these lines are about they mention the places where this knight of the Canterbury Tales had been a victor when they were won. So all the countries, the victory on these nations bear a testimony to the worthiness of this knight. And in the great sea, so not only did he battle on earth, but he led several campaigns upon the sea. At many a noble armies had he been, at mortal battles had he been 15, and he waged 15 mortal wars and fought for our faith at Tremesine. So he used to fight not to have the territories included into the territories of his master, but he was sent as an invader on places that were heathens. This line suggests that he fought for our faith. He went and made the heathens Christians. That means he brought the people, those who were away from God, into the territory of God. So he is genuinely a very honored man. In lists thrice. Lists are the official statement of the worth of people in a country. So, as the most adorable man, he stood thrice at the top of this list and always slain his foe. A is always slain, killed his enemy. And with those people who were heathens, he was not pitiful. He killed them. The same worthy knight had been also sometime with the Lord of Palati, another heathen in Turkey. ILK is same. This very same worthy knight had been with the Lord of Palati. So those countries which have been mentioned in that list are added, the countries of Palati and Turkey, some old territories. These he had led campaigns for these countries. And evermore he had a sovereign praise. So, his praise was not the praise of a knight. He was evermore, everywhere, and on every occasion, he had a sovereign's praise. He was not thought of as a knight just, he was thought of as a king. Because in the very beginning, when Chaucer makes an explanation of his character, he said that right from the time that he began to ride out, he loved chivalry, truth and honor, freedom and courtesy. This courteous man, therefore, because he was so courteous, he was so humble, that he was praised even more than his masters, for whom he led the war. And now, Chaucer is fond of making caricatures of his characters. Let's see what a caricature is. Caricature is the distorted image from the original one to gain some humorous end. This is a very famous and a very popular form of art which is prevalent when someone is wanting to make fun, as you see in cartoons, of specially important, prominent political, religious or otherwise some very widely known entities, then you do not make their images because they may not be caught in those acts. But you can make a caricature and see him as being caught in the act. So, though that he was worthy, he was wise. A very special usage of though. We join two sentences. It is a conjunction which joins two disparate ideas. Though I am poor, I have a big benevolent heart. So, though I am poor, I have a big heart. Because people generally believe that poverty may not have a big heart. So, though is used with a general conviction that what goes to the left side of the sentence does not tally with the right side of the sentence. So, though that he was worthy, the poet has until now, Chaucer has until now explained to us that this knight is worthy, but he also says that he was wise. By this he means that there were other knights who were worthy, but they were bodily strong, but mentally weak. Whereas this one, because he studied in the kaleidoscope presented by Chaucer, the portrait gallery presented by Chaucer, so he needs to be the best. And this knight is best not just because he is worthy, but also because he is wise. He employs his brains as much as he employs his body. And off his port, as meek as is a maid. So if you ask about his behavior, port is conduct. If you ask about his conduct, he was as meek as is a maid. Now this is Chaucerian simile. Meek as a maid. Not only a simile, but an alliterating simile. He never yet no villainy ever said in all his life unto no matter what. So let whatever is to happen, happen, but he will never in his lifetime say a villainous word in all his life. So this justifies his being as meek as a maid. With all his wisdom, he has that courtesy which causes him never to use a villainous word. Because generally we see that people who rise to power, they become discourteous to people. Whereas this gentle knight, this meritorious knight, has never in his life said any word of villainy. He was a very perfect, gentle knight. So 3 adjectives together, running and still not finding a sufficiency for the character portrayal of this knight, but we see him really as the rightful man to begin the troop of the pilgrims. So he was a very perfect gentle knight. But for to tell you of his array, in the beginning, Chaucer had said that he is also going to apprise you of the dress that these people came in. But here he uses a but in the beginning of the line. Whenever a poet uses a but or a yet, he is having a shift in tone. Whatever has been the shift, whatever has been the tone until now, and we see the tone until now has been the tone of admiration for this knight. So he says, but to tell you of his array, if you ask him how he was dressed, his horse were good. So the poet perforce doesn't want to draw your attention directly on the dress of the knight. He says that his horse were good. Naturally, a knight is going not on foot, he is going on the horse. So his horse needs to be a very good one. But he was not gay. See, Chaucer can make an understanding not just of the human beings, but he has a very legitimate understanding of animals as well. He says the horse was not gay. And how can you tell if a horse is happy or if he is not happy? Because the one that is happy prances with his head high up, whereas this horse has come with his head hung down. And why was that? He'll tell you. And now he then focuses our attention on his dress. Of fashion he wore a gaipon, all besmeared with his habergoon. Fashion is a coarse cloth, of which he was wearing a gaipon. Gaipon is an upper cloth, a coat-like cloth that ends at the waist, only waist low. So he was wearing this. Naturally, he couldn't afford to wear a long gown as one would do if he was going in a fashion parade. He has come from a war, and therefore he is in the same dress because it is all besmeared. Besmeared is spotted, stained with the grease. Habergoon is grease with which he should have kept his weapons intact so that they do not lose their shine and the point. So his dress was all stained because he was late to come from his voyage and went for to do his pilgrimage. So only now, only very now he has come from a voyage, that is from a war, and he has decided to do his pilgrimage, because he should have known that this is the time when many people would be going, and that might be he might not have taken into account that people are going, but after having maybe slain his foe, killed his enemy, it became very obvious for him to undertake his pilgrimage. With this ends the character of the knight. The knight who is a very perfect, gentle knight. The knight who loves truth and chivalry, truth, honor, freedom, and courtesy. And that he has a good horse, but the horse is not gay, because the tired horse and the tired knight are freshly set to have their pilgrimage. Now, this is the father, but Chaucer does not end his description of the royalty. I think I have had too much of an explanation, but then okay, I'll continue. With him there was his son, a young squire. Squire is a landlord, the one who is the master of, who has full authority of a big land. So his son is reaping the harvest of the labors of his father. He's the son, he's a young squire, and Chaucer is fond of giving you the tagline in the very first statement. So he tells that just as the knight was a worthy man, so also his young son is a lover and a lusty bachelor. See how it rhymes very well. He's the alliterative device to explain this son. He's a lover and a lusty bachelor, with locks curl as they were laid in press. So his hair, locks are long hair, they were curled as though they had been laid in press. Chaucer is pricking at the conscience of the child. Why? Why is he affording himself this levity? Because of 20 years of age he was, I guess. The boy is a very young one. Of his stature he was of even length, very tall boy, and bundily deliver, and of great strength. So he has taken after his father in his physical appearance. He delivered himself well, and he is very strong looking. And he had been sometime in Chevauchée, in Flandria, in Artois and Picardy. So not that he is completely devoid of prowess of all kind. He had been sometime in Chevauchée. Chevauchée is bravery, show of bravery. He had been with his father at Flandria, at Artois and Picardy. So like father, like son, but very much unlike him. The father has no care for the stains that sit on his dress, and the son has had his locks pressed. And Chaucer takes every delight to explain this boy and born him well. So the boy is carrying himself in good state, as of so little space. So he was standing in a way, in hope to stand in his lady's grace. So he had taken every measure to be presentable at any point of time. And what were the measures? Embroidered was he. The measure is that the dress that he is wearing is thickly embroidered. It's a brocade dress, as it were a meadow. So his dress shows there is meadow outside, there are flowers, there are birds, and there are vines, and there is intoxication everywhere. And so also is there intoxication with the flowers embroidered on his dress. So many flowers were sat on his dress that he appeared as though an advertisement of flowers, all full of fresh flowers, white and red. So his dress had flowers, white and dress. Singing he was, or fluting all the day. So what are the other pursuits that this boy had? He was singing and fluting, a merry-making man. He was as fresh as is the month of May. So they are in April, and the boy is 1 month ahead of his father. He is like the month of May. This is Chaucer's own measure of explaining that the boy is far ahead of his father. Short was his gown, with sleeves long and wide. Very fashionable. Short gown, and the sleeves are long and very wide. Well could he sit on horse and fairly ride. But do not be mistaken that since he is fashionable, he might not be knowing the trades of his father. He knows them fully well, because the way he sat on the horse and the way he rode betrayed his good upbringing. He could songs make and well indite. But the boy is so, he is the jack of all trades. He has not proved himself master of the trade of knighthood, but he knows all other trades that can make him eligible to stand in his lady's grace. He could songs make and well compose them. Indite is composing them. Immediately, he was so deft with his language. He could make songs and he could also compose, that is, sing out to the ladies, jest and also dance. And he could jest also. Just is jest, to make crack jokes. So he could crack jokes and dance and well portray and write. So he could paint and he could write. He knows nearly all arts that are possible for a man to acquire. So hot he loved that by night a tale, he slept no more than does a nightingale. In all the efforts that he was making, the nightingale is exercises in expertise of various arts. So hotly he loved that he slept no more than does a nightingale. A nightingale sings all night through. And he because there could be the visit of a lady at any point of time. So this man is ready. He is very well equipped for everything, and he wouldn't even sleep. How would Chaucer know that he wouldn't even sleep for all the cares that he took upon grooming himself, because he should have come there half sleepy. He might not have desired to come, but then to say a no to the father who is inclined to go on a pilgrimage even when he has just returned, because disobedience to such a meritorious father might deprive him from being the squire. So courteous he was, lowly and serviceable. He was courteous, he was very lowly, and he was also serviceable. He always said yes to what his father said and carved before his father at the table. But then he did not leave his legitimate right upon that custom which was accorded to the knight, that is, having the board begun. Beginning the board, in those times, a big animal was roasted complete, and this was laid down on the table, and to carve before him, CARF, his CARVE, carved before his father. His father used to give him the privilege to slice out the first piece for him. So the boy is already on 2 making a claims upon his father's earnings. With all his love for dainties, with all his love for arts, he is in a way a very courteous, low and serviceable son. This courtesy is also an inheritance from his father. So, in the two characters that we have discussed today, the knight and the squire, we see knight as the representative of the fighter class, the class that had the stability of states ensured. And in the squire, we see the landlord class, the class that would substitute their meritorious fathers to make a just claim upon the land. These two representatives of the society, of the state, we can plainly see that the knight has a right claim and the son is only there as a follower. Thank you. We shall continue.